Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Hello!
Our mission here, as always, is simple. We take a huge stack of source materials, reports, articles, all of it, and we pull out the absolute core nuggets of knowledge for you.
And today, we are really diving into something complex.
Yeah, it's a high-stakes, multi-layered situation. You've got an ancient civilization, you've got generational survival, deep-seated Federation politics.
A massive technological project and a really chillingly effective infiltration happening right under Starfleet's nose.
That's right. So our sources, they center on the Dokaalan, a remarkable civilization really defined by just surviving.
For 2 centuries, we're looking at their struggle against, total annihilation and this complex, almost beautiful dream they were trying to realize.
The transformation of dead world.
Exactly. But we also have to look at the other side, the political and military pressure Starfleet was under when they arrived on the scene.
And how that pressure was, frankly, exploited by a desperate and previously known adversary.
Right.
So the narrative we're charting is basically how a mission of mercy, Starfleet showing up to help these survivors, it turns into the unwitting enablement of a hostile takeover. The core conflict is just so cynical.
It is. I mean, you have this peaceful, resilient society attempting what our sources call the singular technological feat of their history.
The transformation of the planet Ijuuka.
Right. And they become the key to salvation for their enemies.
It's a study in knowledge as a weapon, isn't it?
Absolutely. The Satorans are antagonists here.
Yeah.
They didn't use superior firepower. They didn't show up with a fleet.
No.
They weaponized Starfleet's most foundational principle, trust and technical aid. They turned it right against the Dokaalan.
So we're going to trace exactly how they managed that deep infiltration.
And what the implications are for Federation policy moving forward.
So settle in, because we are diving deep into the weight of history, the politics of paranoia, and the near-fatal sabotage of the Dokaalan dream.
To really get the scale of the crisis that brought the Enterprise into the sector, you have to go back.
Way back.
2 centuries back to the Dokaalan tragedy. Their homeworld, Dokal, was destroyed. But the key thing here is this wasn't like an asteroid strike. It wasn't instantaneous.
No, the sources paint this terrifying picture. We're talking months of accelerating, just uncontrollable tectonic stresses.
Imagine living through that. It's not one bad day. It's years, maybe decades of escalating tremors until the planet's core itself just gives up.
Millions were lost in that final collapse. But what's so incredible, what our notes really emphasize, is the resilience of the survivors.
Absolutely. I mean, they didn't have warp drive. They couldn't just call for help and get evacuated.
Right. No Federation transport ships waiting?
No. They achieved what's described as only rudimentary spaceflight, just enough to ferry a fraction of their population to the only place they could go.
This immense hazard-filled asteroid field?
Orbiting between the 5th and 6th planets of their solar system. And this wasn't just a refugee camp, a temporary stop.
No, this was a permanent move into a brutal, brutal environment.
And our notes show that this desperate scramble for survival, it quickly morphed into this fierce, determined society.
They set up a whole network of mining colonies, self-sufficient.
They're mining materials from the asteroids, building their own habitats, and maintaining this highly technical culture that's just rooted in self-reliance and honor.
And this all leads to their single collective obsession.
The Ijuuka project.
Right. Their main goal in life became the remaking of the planet Ijuuka.
And it wasn't just about finding a new home, It was meant to be a literal physical monument to everyone they lost on Dokal.
A project of just mammoth complexity and duration. The sources use really strong language here, they call it, requiring scientific and engineering principles never before imagined.
And the Dokaalan knew it would take generations. They estimated maybe 200 years.
The same amount of time they'd already spent in the asteroid field. The emotional investment was just absolute.
So you have to hold that image in your mind, this fierce, focused determination, because that ambition stands in such stark contrast to the mood back at Starfleet headquarters at the same time.
Right. While the Dokaalan are fighting for their collective memory, Fleet Admiral Nechayev and Admiral Ross are. They're just reading status reports.
And they're doing it against this heavy backdrop of post-war anxiety.
This political context is so crucial for understanding why this particular mission was so sensitive. The Dominion War was a recent history.
The Borg threat was still a very chilling reality. The Federation was constantly looking over its shoulder.
And that anxiety was manifesting in these specific, troubling proposals from an Admiral Azernal.
Right, and these weren't just, standard defense boosts. These proposals represented a significant, maybe permanent shift toward militarization.
Which really worried officers like Ross.
Deeply.
So what were these proposals exactly?
Well, for one, augmenting security patrols along every sensitive border. Klingon, Romulan, Bajoran.
So a total lack of trust, even in their supposed allies.
Exactly. And even more dramatically, they called for retrofitting every single Starfleet vessel with heavier armament.
Every vessel, regardless of its mission.
Regardless of its primary mission profile. Think about that for a second. An Oberth-class science vessel or an exploratory ship like the Enterprise?
You'd have its research capacity compromised by the weight, the energy demands of heavy combat gear.
And Azernal also wanted the permanent assignment of dedicated ground combat units to line ships.
That's not exploration, that's preparing for boarding actions.
Yeah.
For planetary occupation.
And it went all the way down to the Academy.
Of course.
The proposals demanded an increased focus on combat strategies and tactics, introduced way earlier in the curriculum. It's a systemic cultural shift.
Prioritizing soldiers over scientists and explorers.
And Admiral Ross, who'd spent his whole career dedicated to exploration, he opposed this strenuously.
But
Nechayev, who had seen the worst of the Dominion War, the worst of the Borg, she saw the pragmatic merit in it.
She points out these proposals aren't actually new, right?
Not at all. Some had been on the table since the first time they ever encountered the Borg. The only difference now was the political will was finally there to enact them.
Fueled by fear.
Exactly. So you have Starfleet brass obsessed with military readiness.
Yeah.
And into this whole environment walks Captain Picard, whose reputation is legendary, but also
controversial.
Yeah, controversial precisely because he prioritizes ethics and exploration over military pragmatism.
And Nechayev and Ross, they discuss this. They talk about his past. Most famously, his decision not to use that invasive computer program against the Borg Collective.
From a purely military point of view, that was a catastrophic failure to neutralize a threat.
But Picard saw it as genocide. Genocide against helpless, assimilated victims. He chose his moral compass over a tactical win.
And then there was the more recent Ontalian incident. This is essential context.
It is. He took the blame for a mission failure, the whole demon ship affair, to stop the Ontalian government from losing face.
Because if they'd been publicly embarrassed, they would probably seceded from the Federation, shattering a key political alliance.
So Nechayev, she ultimately saw that as proof of his absolute loyalty. He sacrificed his own reputation for the Federation's political stability.
But what it really did was put him under a huge political spotlight.
Any mission failure, especially a humanitarian one like this, that could be spun by Azernal's supporters as a drain on military resources.
It would be scrutinized heavily.
His sources confirm it. Picard was walking on eggshells. He was intensely aware that he needed a success.
He needed this aid mission to go perfectly, both to help the Dokaalan and to validate the entire peaceful, exploratory mission philosophy he championed.
Right in the face of this growing militarization inside Starfleet.
And that, unfortunately, is the perfect stage for a deeply cynical enemy to exploit.
The Soterans didn't just target the Dokaalan.
No. They targeted Starfleet's political vulnerabilities, and they did it right through Picard.
Okay, so the Enterprise arrives. And at first, everything seems to be going well.
Right. The initial reports are all positive. They find this thriving, determined society. They start providing aid to the Ijuuka project.
But that optimism, it ends pretty abruptly.
Very abruptly. We move now to the mounting disasters that start to hint that something much darker is going on.
Something other than just random accidents.
Exactly. The first incident was bad, but the second one at Mining Station 12, that's where the horror really crystallized.
This was a habitat with over 800 Dokaalan.
And Starfleet arrives to find it reduced to a lifeless, frozen hulk.
Commander Riker's assessment was just chilling. The sensors showed an immense dark circle at the center of the damage,
pointing to an explosion of massive scale and power. But the worst part wasn't the explosion itself, it was the body count.
And how they died.
Only 104 survivors were rescued. And even then, 6 of them died in treatment later.
And the sources emphasized that so many of the victims, they didn't die instantly in the blast.
No, they died slowly. Trapped in darkness and cold after cascading failures, knocked out all the life support systems.
This was just orders of magnitude worse than the first incident. It confirmed something had fundamentally changed.
And the first suspicions of malice, they didn't even come from Starfleet.
No, they came from the Dokaalan themselves. from First Minister Jotun.
Their elderly leader and chronicler, he was the one who first raised the possibility of sabotage.
And he suggested extremists within his own society might be opposing the Ijuuka project.
His theory was that the project was such a massive consumer of resources. It might be drawing materials or manpower away from other critical survival systems.
But here's where the plot really thickens.
Jotun admits that similar incidents, which they'd previously just written off as accidents, had happened even before Starfleet got there.
Which strongly implies a years-long campaign, not just some recent thing sparked by the Federation's arrival.
Right, and Captain Picard immediately picks up on this tension. Counselor Troi is observing the Dokaalan leaders, and she notes their guarded emotions.
She can sense this deep well of fear and suppressed information.
So Picard, relying on his instinct, knew right away there was more happening here than meets the eye.
And that gut feeling was critical. It forced him to move beyond the accident hypothesis immediately.
So the investigation logically shifts to the focus of the Dokaalan dream itself.
The planet Ijuuka.
Commander La Forge and Lieutenant Torek are sent down to the atmospheric processing facility to check out the terraforming systems.
And this is where they find it. Concrete, undeniable proof of alien interference.
They find two critical anomalies. First, a small, isolated device. It's attached to a storage tank, and it's introducing chemical compounds into the atmosphere.
This isn't a flaw. This is precision engineering.
Yeah.
The compounds were carefully blended.
Suggesting very specific, very subtle adjustments to the atmospheric process.
But the real forensic breakthrough, the smoking gun, came from the device's composition.
Its casing was made of rhodinium.
And rhodinium isn't just some generic metal, right?
Not at all. It's an ultra-dense element. It's known for its highly stable isotope structure. It's used in proprietary shielding, high-yield energy containment. It's specialized stuff.
And crucially, the sources confirm rhodinium is unequivocally not found in that region of space.
Which confirms an off-world entity constructed and deployed it. It's a specific forensic signature. It's like finding a custom-made, branded tool at a crime scene.
It points directly to an advanced foreign manufacturer.
And the sabotage wasn't just hardware. La Forge and Torek also detected these subtle variations in the computer systems overseeing the automated processes.
So it's a long-term, quiet compromise.
Yeah.
Not a sudden hack, but subtle modifications made over a long period to shift the terraforming parameters without tripping any alarms.
Right, and here's where it gets dynamic. The moment they make this discovery, they're discovered themselves.
Pursued by what they think is Dokaalan security.
Who are actually the Satarans in disguise. And during their capture, the engineers make another crucial observation about their pursuers.
Their weapons.
Yeah, they possess this bizarre, multiracial arsenal. We're talking outdated Starfleet phase pistols, Klingon disruptors.
Even Bajoran phasers. If this was some state-level operation, why use such a sloppy collection of mismatched gear?
That's the insight. It wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate misdirection. By using this assorted generic collection of galactic hand-me-downs, they prevent any immediate forensic trail leading back to the Sataran homeworld.
They were creating a confused mercenary group profile to throw Starfleet off the scent.
Exactly. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, the conspiracy confirms just how sophisticated it is by neutralizing the single greatest threat on the ship.
Commander Data.
While the away team is fighting on Ijuuka, Data is incapacitated by some unknown means.
And the timing is not an accident.
Not at all. The conspirators understood that Data, with his unmatched analytical capabilities, could instantly process the new rhodinium evidence, cross-reference the atmospheric mods, and connect all those dots in milliseconds.
He was the single point of failure for their entire plan.
Right. And the cause of his breakdown was unknown to the crew at the time, which just emphasizes the sophistication of the attack.
They didn't just shut him down. They used a method so subtle that even his own advanced internal diagnostics were compromised.
Buying the infiltrators critical time. It speaks volumes about the Satarans' preparation. They didn't just study the Dokaalan, they studied Starfleet.
They understood operational procedures, key personnel vulnerabilities, and they knew Data's threat profile completely.
So while the technical investigation is confirming sabotage, Dr. Crusher and her medical staff are dealing with this unique, fundamental medical paradox.
Right. This isn't just about treating injuries. This is a profound study in adaptive survival.
The ambient radiation in that asteroid field, their home for 200 years, it was debilitating. Early travelers got sick and died.
The Dokaalan solved this with its sophisticated medical regimen. Periodic inoculations, daily medication.
which they believed combated the radiation's effects, and it kept their illness rates near zero.
But Crusher's team realized that the official Dokaalan medical assessment was, well, it was fundamentally incomplete.
During the triage of the survivors from Mining Station 12, they saw these acute withdrawal-like symptoms.
Fevers, rapid deterioration, and a dangerous risk of asphyxiation.
But only when the Dokaalan were removed from their radiation-saturated environment for a prolonged period.
The timeline is key here, isn't it? The sources highlighted.
They do. The onset of severe symptoms happened around 9.6 hours after they boarded the Enterprise.
That consistency led to the big realization. Their physiology had fundamentally adapted.
Their medical scheme wasn't countering the radiation. It was allowing their biology to live in harmony with it.
They had developed a physical, generational dependence on the radiation for survival.
You could almost think of the radiation as an engineered nutrient, a necessity for their metabolic stability after 2 centuries of evolution in that environment.
And this immediately throws Dr. Crusher into a massive ethical conundrum.
It challenges the core tenets of the Prime Directive of the whole Federation aid philosophy.
Because if she were to develop a cure, which, with Federation resources, was entirely possible to eliminate this radiation dependence, she would essentially be giving the Dokaalan the ability to leave. To leave the system permanently without risking death.
But Crusher saw the devastating social consequence. The entire Dokaalan society was built on this single generational goal of finishing the Ijuuka project.
It was their monument, their purpose.
And if Crusher provides the scientific solution that allows for immediate, safe emigration, she risks fracturing or even destroying the collective identity and mission of the people who stayed.
She was afraid that if enough people chose freedom and safety over the hard labor of the Ijuuka project, the whole monumental effort would just collapse.
And it would rob the committed Dokaalan of their purpose and their future home.
So Picard, ever the pragmatist guided by ethics, tells her to continue the research.
Right, to fully understand the issue. But he recognized the enormous weight of the decision. He knew that even a medical cure could be a form of cultural destruction if it wasn't adopted willingly by their leadership.
A difficult decision. It's about sovereignty, really. Is a medical cure always the right answer?
Exactly. And while Crusher is wrestling with those ethics, Data, thankfully recovered and back online, was trying to apply a technological solution
to the generational time problem of Ijuuka, hoping to give Jachin and his people a much-needed win.
Data devised a plan to drastically accelerate the transformation using something called phylocyte.
This is where we get into some obscure technical history.
Yeah. Phylocyte was an engineered element, and it was refined using lessons learned from the Federation's highly controversial but scientifically revolutionary Genesis project.
Its original use was, funnily enough, to combat a viral plague on the plant-based life forms of the planet Phylos, back in the mid-23rd century.
But Data extrapolated its geoengineering applications, and the promise was staggering.
His calculations suggested that by introducing precise amounts of phylocyte into the Ijuukan atmosphere via specialized torpedoes, he could cut the transformation time by an estimated 67.5%.
Decades of work reduced to a handful of years?
So Jachin, thrilled by the idea of honoring the pledge to the lost, while still letting the current generation see it happen, he authorizes the plan.
But for Data to calculate the complex ratios, the atmospheric mix, the torpedo spread, he needed precise, up-to-date information.
On the existing Ijuukan atmospheric chemistry and the Dokaalan's own terraforming records.
And he relied entirely on information provided by Science Minister Cray.
And that reliance was the Saterran's ultimate technological trap.
Because Cray, of course, was Gielgud, the Saterran imposter.
So Data's calculations, which were flawlessly executed and simulated in all 17 tests he ran,
were based on manipulated variables provided by Gielgud.
The experiment failed, and it failed catastrophically.
It wasn't just that the atmosphere failed to accelerate. The alterations were violently inconsistent with what was required.
The phylocyte, mixed according to the Saterran specifications, acted as a nullifier, or even a chemical contaminant.
Imagine adding a catalyst that, instead of speeding up the reaction you want, introduces a new, toxic compound that takes decades to neutralize.
Preliminary results suggested they had damaged, or possibly completely nullified, all of the Dokaalan's existing progress.
Effectively rendering the planet unusable to them. Maybe forever.
And this failure wasn't just a technical setback. It was a profound psychological blow.
For Picard, the sources describe a massive sense of déjà vu and failure. He had gambled on Starfleet's advanced tech, on the trust he placed in the Dokaalan liaison.
and he had potentially ruined the generational dream of an entire people. This failure validated every concern raised by his critics, like Admiral Azernal.
The catastrophic failure of the Phyllosite plan, combined with Data's incapacitation and the discovery of the Rhodinium device.
It finally allowed Picard and the senior staff to connect all the dots.
They had been manipulated at the highest possible level.
And the chief antagonists were identified as the Satarans.
Right. And this wasn't just some random enemy. The Enterprise had prior antagonistic history with them.
They'd encountered them before and knew they had sophisticated stealth and memory manipulation techniques.
But their motivation here was pure desperation, not just malice. They had failed in a major war with the Letians and left their homeworld environmentally damaged.
The sources estimate the planet was projected to be uninhabitable within the current generation's lifetime.
Which means the pressure was on, especially for leaders like Lorcan, who was fighting for the survival of his own children.
They needed a quick, clean solution, and the Dokaalan's decades of work on Ijuuka provided it.
With minor, subtle adjustments to the atmospheric chemistry, the planet would become the closest match to Sateran physiological requirements available in that part of space.
So their goal was this long-term stealth effort. It took years.
Just subtly alter the Dokaalan's terraforming to suit Sateran needs. Let the Dokaalan do all the hard work.
And then, right before it's done, just claim the planet and dispose of the original inhabitants.
A deeply, deeply cynical plan. And their method of infiltration was terrifyingly effective.
They use these mimicking shrouds.
Highly advanced garments. They have integrated sensors, holographic emitters. They can perfectly replicate humanoid forms.
Down to subtle physiological markers and vocal patterns.
This tech allowed them to replace key Dokaalan figures years ago. Security Minister Nidan was actually Denik, a Sataran imposter.
Science Minister Cray, the man who doomed the Phyllosite project, was Gilyu.
And Lorcan, the ultimate leader, he played the long game. He impersonated First Minister Shotton's low-level assistant for months.
Which gave him constant close access to Hatton's mannerisms, his schedule.
And most importantly, his genuine emotional states. Lorcan only assumed Shotton's full identity right at the end, after the real Shotton was killed.
And it's so important to remember how effective this was against Starfleet's most sensitive censor, Counselor Troi.
Right. Troi noted that Saturn emotions were difficult to read. She described it as almost as bad as dealing with a Ferengi.
Which they used to their advantage.
They integrated it into their defense. While working as Hatton's assistant, Lorcan could rely on Hatton's honest emotions, his genuine joy, his hope, his gratitude about the Ijuuka project and Starfleet's help.
To deflect Troy's suspicion. She was sensing truthful emotion, just not the underlying manipulative intent of the Sataran hiding underneath.
And the infiltration wasn't just limited to the Dokaalan habitat. They also placed operatives in Starfleet uniforms right aboard the Enterprise.
Taking the forms of junior engineers, security staff, Lieutenant Tyler, Lieutenant Pauls, Crewman Lomax, Ensign Maxon.
Kalsha, one of their most senior operatives, was a chameleon. He first took the identity of Lieutenant Tyler, then he killed the Andorian Lieutenant Deeks to assume his identity.
Which gave him direct access to main engineering.
Exactly where Data operated and where the Phyllosite torpedoes were being prepped.
And Kalsha's primary assignment was the incapacitation of Data, which he executed flawlessly.
The Satarans knew that if they controlled the Enterprise's resources and kept the android neutralized, their plan was virtually unstoppable.
And another operative, Muick, who had first taken the form of Ensign Maxon, was discovered almost by accident.
Right. He was caught in Cargo Bay 4 in the act of strangling the original crewman Lomax and another crew member, the original Maxon, to assume a new identity.
Which confirmed that multiple spies were active, constantly shifting forms, making security an immediate nightmare for the bridge crew.
But the ultimate success of the Satarans wasn't their brute force. It was their ability to leverage Starfleet's own competence against itself.
Gilyu, as Science Minister Cray, provided the precise, calculated misinformation to Data about the atmosphere.
And Data, functioning perfectly on the wrong inputs, then unwittingly designed the Phyllosite torpedo spread to accelerate the atmosphere transformation.
In a way that solely benefited the Satarans.
It reduced their timetable by nearly 2/3, while simultaneously guaranteeing the planet would be toxic and unusable to the Dokaalan.
It's the ultimate weaponization of goodwill. Starfleet brought the tech Phyllosite and Data's genius.
And the Satarans simply provided the instructions, ensuring the result was catastrophic for the Dokaalan and perfect for them.
So once Data is operational again and La Forge and Torek have escaped from Ijuuka, the Sataran leader Lorcan knows the jig is up.
The time for subtlety is over. He makes the immediate, terrifying shift to overt hostility.
Lorcan, having shed his assistant disguise and killed the real First Minister, he seizes control of the central habitat.
And his demands were backed by threats designed specifically to paralyze a Federation crew that's bound by protocols.
He threatened to destroy the magnetic coupling network holding the colonies together,
which would cause a rapid dispersal of the whole habitat network, resulting in mass casualties.
He also revealed he'd placed explosives throughout the facility, but his most cutting threat was against the Enterprise.
He warned that Sataran agents still aboard the starship were ready to destroy it if Picard interfered.
Picard's initial reaction here is just brilliant stalling.
It is. He acts defeated, he recognizes he's been outplayed, and he orders the Enterprise to retreat at slow speed, apparently giving in.
And this maneuver buys them critical time for the counter-strategy to materialize.
That counter-strategy, of course, hinged entirely on data.
Right. The android, recovering rapidly, focuses his efforts on neutralizing the remaining threat on the ship.
And he quickly devises a method to expose the remaining Cedarans. A targeted hypersonic signal.
This wasn't a weapon, not really. It was a surgical technical attack.
Designed to overload the mimicking shroud's integrated sensor and holographic systems. The signal would force the shrouds to fail,
causing the Saturans to reveal their true forms, these metallic black and silver exoskeletons.
And the execution of this signal was a high-tension moment. It successfully revealed one operative, Huick, who was disguised as Lieutenant Pauls, right there on the main bridge.
He just collapsed. And this confirmed the immediate threat was neutralized. Starfleet could proceed without worrying about a bomb in main engineering.
So with the Enterprise secure, Picard immediately stops his slow retreat and doubles back towards the Dokaalan habitat.
And Lorcan had made a critical, fatal mistake.
Based on old information, he assumed Starfleet's transporters were still hampered and compromised by the asteroid field's radiation, like they had been at the start of the mission.
And Picard and the senior staff capitalized on that intelligence gap.
They completely avoided a traditional boarding party assault, which would have risked the lives of the 16 hostages Lorcan was holding in the council chambers.
Instead, they executed this technologically stunning final move.
They used the transporter systems to execute a coordinated surgical strike.
Picard and Vale, with Data and La Forge on the Enterprise, first used the transporter to beam the Saturn leader, Lorcan, and his immediate subordinates.
Right out of the council chambers and into Starfleet brig cells.
But they didn't stop there.
No.
Okay.
Simultaneously, and with astonishing precision, they used the transporter to extract all 16 hostages at once from the chamber, placing them safely aboard the Enterprise.
The swiftness and technological surprise of it all, neutralizing the enemy leader and securing all the assets in the blink of an eye.
It left Lorcan shocked into immediate surrender. He ordered his remaining operatives, both in the habitat and those still trying to flee the asteroid field, to stand down.
So in the aftermath, the Dokaalan began the difficult process of restoration.
And the act that symbolized their renewed trust in the Federation was deeply moving. The real First Minister Shatin's personal journal,
chronicling their history from before Dokaalan's destruction, was presented to Picard.
And this gift was framed as a formal introduction of our people to the Federation. It was a powerful sign of absolute trust in Picard's judgment.
It validated his principled approach, even when his political standing was so shaky.
Starfleet, recognizing the geopolitical importance and the moral debt they owed, dispatched the USS Musgrave.
And a massive detachment from the Starfleet Corps of Engineers to help with colony repairs and build more permanent, secure facilities.
And Data, now working with the remaining honest Dokaalan science team, developed a new theory to counteract the subtle, damaging Sataran changes to the atmosphere.
Which required accepting the reality. The generational project would take several more years, similar to the original plan.
But this time, the formula was sound, and everyone was confident it would succeed in realizing the Dokaalan dream.
And finally, Dr. Crusher continued her vital medical research on the radiation dependency.
She realized the next phase of her study had to be intensely focused on the effects of prolonged isolation from the radiation, understanding the long-term metabolic and genetic changes.
A complex study of genetics and physiology that was expected to take months or even years.
Which just emphasizes the depth of the Dokaalan adaptation to their hostile adopted home.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a lot of ground here, from the trauma of Dokaal's destruction to the cold political calculation of the Saterans.
This deep dive really showed us how a profound dream, the generational terraforming of Ijuuka, was nearly hijacked by a desperate enemy.
An enemy who weaponized Starfleet's technological aid, the file site, to their own cynical ends.
I think the key takeaway nugget here is the power of knowledge and preparation. The Saturns never needed a massive fleet.
No.
They showed that specialized knowledge of Dokaalan physiology, of Data's programming, of Federation political weaknesses is a far more potent weapon than overt force.
Their deep infiltration allowed them to successfully manipulate a complex, decades-long project right under the nose of the Enterprise.
And the Dokaalan existence itself is just a fascinating case study in adaptive survival.
Right. We saw how their unique medicine, which was intended to counteract the asteroid radiation, ultimately became essential for their very functioning in their new home.
They literally evolved to depend on their hostile environment, which created this profound multi-generational challenge for Starfleet's traditional aid model.
And for Picard, this whole incident was a moment of unexpected redemption.
It was, and not from the bureaucrats like Nechayev and Zernal, but from the clear, decisive support of his crew and the enduring, tangible trust of the Dokaalan people.
Symbolized by the gift of Jason's life chronicle.
His willingness to trust his ethical instincts over regulation and political paranoia was what ultimately saved the colony.
So as we close this deep dive, we want to leave you with this final provocative thought.
Dr. Crusher confirmed that the Dokaalan were physically dependent on the asteroid radiation to survive in their environment.
Right. But First Minister He Chun's journal revealed that indigenous Dokaalan medical research was already underway, aiming to end their need for inoculations and their dependence on that radiation.
So given that the Saterans were focused on long-term, subtle manipulation, and they needed the Dokaalan to stay tethered to that asteroid field until Ijuuka was ready for them.
Was the Dokaalan's own medical research, this project that sought to end their dependency, was it truly an internal scientific endeavor to reclaim their physiological freedom?
Or was it yet another subtle, long-term project orchestrated by the Saterans to ensure the Dokaalan remained permanently locked into a single, radiation-dependent system until the planet was ready to be claimed?
A fascinating overlap of medicine, technology, and cynical manipulation to consider until the next deep dive.
We'll see you next time.